Hello everyone, my name is Chip. I'm sorry I haven't been putting out content as often as usual these last few weeks, but the truth is in late December I got very sick, and everything became a chore and left me exhausted. I probably spent more time in bed in the last couple of weeks than I have for the rest of the year combined. So I went and I got myself a COVID test. The results got back, and I've got good news, bad news. The good news is I don't have COVID. The bad news is I'm still bald, fat, ugly, and poor. Yes, as it turns out, it was just a simple matter of my body not taking too kindly to some medicine that I'd been taking to help treat the persistent ringing in my ear. Excuse me. Hello? 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 Do you just want to go to the deck list? Alright, and here's today's list. As you can see, we're back with another Lurrus Leap Hatebears style deck. So we've got Lurrus of the Dream Den as our companion as usual. Now I've mixed around some of the numbers. All of our Grave Hate is now in the sideboard, our Scavenging Ooze and our Soul Guide Lanterns. I've removed a Grand Abolisher and the Aethersworn Canonist so I can fit in the Uriok Champions in the sideboard. We're also down to one Phyrexian Revoker. In the main deck, I'm trying a new engine. I'm trying Smuggler's Copter and Amara, Soul of Accord. Now Amara, when we tap it, makes a 1/1 white soldier token with lifelink, which that's a cool engine just on its own. Every time we attack, we can start generating tokens. We can then also sacrifice the tokens to our evolutionary leap, so we can turn tokens into real creatures, so we can be digging into our deck without any loss on board. It's sort of like a miniature Voice of Resurgence engine. Smuggler's Copter helps that engine keep going, even if we're in a position where we can't attack in our opponent's end step or to declare blockers. We can crew the Smuggler's Copter, tap the Amara, and generate tokens that way. To fit this in, I have reduced the numbers of some cards, and I have completely removed the Life from the Loams from the main deck. Now that's something I'm probably going to miss, but it means we can run an extra evolutionary leap. So we're now running 3 evolutionary leap. Normally I was a little bit worried about running too many because they're not that great in multiples, but if we have the Smuggler's Copter, maybe we can discard a couple. And apart from that, everything else is pretty much the same. So we should probably get onto some games. Now before we go on to them, I just want to let you know that all the games are pre-recorded, as even though I am feeling better, my voice is still not back to 100%, so I didn't want to be using it for 3 hours of recording. So I already know the results of the games I played. Hopefully you enjoy them. Round 1 and we've lost the die roll. We reveal Lurrus of the Dream Den and off we go. We get a modest hand with 5 lands, a Path to Exile, and an Amara, Soul of the Accord. It's half a combo, so why not? We keep. Our opponent leads on a Field of the Dead tapped and passes to us. At this point I assume we're versing a Titan deck that's got a very slow start. They pass to us and we draw a Noble Hierarch. We run out our Razorverge Thicket and run out the Noble Hierarch. We pass the turn. Opponent plays a Windswept Heath, cracks it immediately, gets themselves a forest, casts an Explore, and then runs out of Selesnya Sanctuary, returning the forest to hand. They pass to us. We decide to take full advantage of that Selesnya Sanctuary, play our Ghost Quarter, and run out our Amara. In our end step, we Ghost Quarter the Selesnya Sanctuary, taking our opponent down 1 mana. They fetch up a Snow-Covered Plains. They play a Forest, and cast a Dryad of the Elysian Grove. They then play a Tangled Veil tapped. They pass to us. We draw a Smuggler's Copter, so our Amara combo is online. We run out the Smuggler's Copter, cast our Noble Hierarch, and then we swing in with Amara for 4. Our opponent doesn't block and we get a soldier token. We pass the turn. Our opponent casts another Explore, plays a Castle Garenbrig and a Windswept Heath, and then Bajuka Bogs our graveyard. They get a zombie off their Field of the Dead, and our Ghost Quarter goes away. No attacks from our opponent, and they pass to us. We draw a second Path to Exile. We play our Ghost Quarter and blow up the Field of the Dead. They crack their Windswept Heath in response, get themselves a Temple Garden tapped, and get themselves one more zombie before Field of the Dead goes away. They get themselves up a Snow-Covered Forest. We crew our Smuggler's Copter with our Amara. At our beginning of combat, our opponent Path to Exiles the Smuggler's Copter. We fetch ourselves up a Plains and decide we're still going to get in with a life-linking soldier for 3. Our opponent throws every creature in front of it. We decide we're going to kill a zombie, and then we pass the turn holding up double path. Our opponent casts another Dryad of the Elysian Grove and passes the turn to us. In their end step, we decide we're far enough ahead that we don't care too much about a prime time, so we decide to path both their Dryad of the Elysian Groves. We go to our turn and we draw a Voice of Resurgence. We play our Horizon Canopy, run out the Voice of Resurgence, Our opponent path to exiles the Amara in response. We let it go, get ourselves a basic plains, and our Voice of Resurgence resolves. We then draw a card with our Horizon Canopy, getting ourselves another path. We go to combat, and we swing in with the Soldier for 3. Our opponent has no cards in hand, and we're feeling pretty happy with our position. They take it down to 11. We pass the turn. They play a Windswept Heath, and pass the turn to us. We draw another Amara. We go to combat, swing in for 3 again with our lifelinking Soldier. We get our Lurrus into hand, and then we run out our Amara, and we pass the turn there. Our opponent casts an Explore into an Elvish Reclaimer, and they pass to us. We draw another Ghost Quarter. We run it out, go to combat, swing with an Exalted Amara, getting ourselves another 1/1 lifelinker. Our opponent throws their zombie token under the bus. We decide to path to exile the Elvish Reclaimer before it can lose Summoning Sickness, and then pass to our opponent. Our opponent draws nothing and concedes the game. Game 2, our opponent's going first, so we reveal our Lurrus and off we go. We get a hand with 2 Aether Vials and a Gadok Teague. I decide this is worth keeping. Our opponent mulls to 5. They play a Temple Garden, and they pass to us. We draw a Hex Drinker. We play a Razorverge Thicket, run out an Aether Vial, and pass the turn. Opponent plays a Windswept Heath, and does nothing. We put a counter on our Aether Vial, play our Horizon Canopy, and run out our Evolutionary Leap. We pass to our opponent, they draw their card. Deciding that they can't beat our Evolutionary Leap deck, they concede the match. We win the die roll. We're going to go first, we reveal our Lurrus, and we get a pretty good taxes hand. We lead on a Temple Garden, pay our 2 life, run out our Noble Hierarch, and pass the turn there. Our opponent plays a Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. I have no idea what's going on here. All I know is I don't like it. And they pass to us. We decide to run out our Leonin Arbiter and go for the good old turn 2 Ghost Quarter you. We pass to our opponent. They play another Shrine of the Forsaken Gods, and they pass to us. We draw an Aether Vial. We play our Horizon Canopy, run out our Voice of Resurgence, swing in with our Leonin Arbiter, hit our opponent for 3 down to 17, and run out our Aether Vial. We pass the turn there. Opponent plays another Shrine of the Forsaken Gods and casts a Spare Supplies. They draw a card and they pass to us. We tick up our Aether Vial, play our Horizon Canopy, swing in for 4, opponent takes it down to 13, and we cast our Smuggler's Copter. Pass the turn there. Opponent plays a Radiant Fountain, gets themselves back up to 15, runs out a Crystalline Giant. In response to its trigger, we path to exile it. Our opponent can't search for a land, and they pass to us. Put another counter on our Aether Vial, we vial in our Thalia, use Thalia to crew our Smuggler's Copter, and we swing in for 7. Smuggler's Copter lets us loot, we draw and ditch another Smuggler's Copter, hit our opponent down to 8, and we put Lurrus into our hand. We pass the turn there. Opponent plays a Bonder's Enclave, and runs out another Crystalline Giant. They get their trigger, Crystalline Giant gets Burst Strike, and they pass to us. We put a counter on our Aether Vial. We draw an Evolutionary Leap, we vial in our Lurrus, use Lurrus to crew our Smuggler's Copter, and we swing in for 9. We draw a card off our Smuggler's Copter, a Temple Garden, we throw away our Evolutionary Leap, and our opponent blocks the Leonin Arbiter. They go down to 1 life, and in our second main, we recast the Leonin Arbiter. We play the Temple Garden tapped, and we pass the turn. They play a Labyrinth of Scophos, and they get another trigger from the Crystalline Giant. It gets a Menace counter. No attacks from them, and they pass to us. We draw a Temple Garden, use our Lurrus to crew our Smuggler's Copter, go to combat, and swing in for 7. With Smuggler's Copter's trigger on the stack, our opponent removes it from combat with Labyrinth of Scophos. We draw a card, it's a Leonin Arbiter, so we throw that away. Our opponent blocks the Thalia. The Crystalline Giant eats our Thalia, but then Voice of Resurgence finishes the job. Game 2, our opponent gets to go first. We reveal our Lurrus, and we get a really good hand. Our opponent keeps 7, and they start with the Labyrinth of Scophos. They pass to us, we play our Forest, and run out a Noble Hierarch. We pass the turn. They play a Bonder's Enclave, and cast a Spare Supplies, drawing a card. They pass to us, we draw a Path to Exile, we play a Plains, run out our Thalia, and run out our Hex Drinker. We pass the turn. Opponent plays a Field of Ruin, and has the Crystalline Giant. It gets a Flying counter, and they pass to us. Well, we play our Horizon Canopy. We decide to level up our Hex Drinker. It's now a 4/4 with protection from instants. We go to combat, and we swing in for 5.
Our opponent takes it down to 15 and we pass the turn. Opponent cracks the spare supplies to draw a card, plays another Labyrinth of Scophos, and gets another counter at random on the Crystalline Giant. This is a hexproof counter, which makes the 2 Path to Exiles in our hand look a bit silly. They play a Crashing Drawbridge. They pass to us. Well, we invest in our Hex Drinker, get it up to level 8, it's now a 6/6 with protection from everything. We play a Temple Garden untapped, shocking ourselves, run out a Noble Hierarch, and swing at our opponents for 8. They take it down to 7, and we pass the turn. Our opponent casts a Thought-Knot Seer, so it is some sort of Eldrazi deck. They take one of our Path to Exiles, they get another counter on the Crystalline Giant, first strike. No attacks from our opponent, and they pass to us. We draw a Ghost Quarter, we play it, go to combat, and swing in for 8. With Thalia out, we have nothing to fear. Our opponent can't block, they take it, and we win the match. Now, if anyone can tell me what's going on here, is this just maybe a budget deck, or is this a legitimate deck that I just got lucky against? I have honestly no idea. It's certainly interesting, but yeah, good game, opponent. We lose the die roll. We reveal our Lurrus. We get a hand with a few lands, a Thalia, a Giver of Runes, and a Path to Exile. We decide to keep. Our opponent also keeps 7. They lead on a Flagstones of Trakir. They pass to us. We get a Noble Hierarch in hand, so we play Razorverge Thicket and run out our Noble Hierarch. Our opponent hits us with the Mana Tithe. Oof. Well, we can't pay, so Noble Hierarch goes away. We pass the turn. Our opponent plays a Shambling Vents tapped and passes to us. We draw an Amara, we play a Forest, and we'll run out Thalia. Our opponent plays an Urborg and casts a Thoughtseize. They take our Amara and they pass the turn to us. We draw our Hex Drinker. We play our Razorverge Thicket, run out our Giver of Runes, and then run out our Hex Drinker and put 1 level up counter on it. We go to combat and we swing in for 2. Our opponent takes it down to 16 and we pass the turn there. Opponent plays a Marsh Flats, runs out a Liliana of the Last Hope. They tick up Liliana, killing our Thalia, and they pass to us. We draw a Temple Garden. We decide to ride this Hex Drinker to victory and level it up all the way to level 5. We then go to combat, swing at our opponent's Liliana for 4. Opponent's Liliana down, we pass the turn. Opponent plays a Swamp, plays a Lingering Souls, and then casts the back half of Lingering Souls from the graveyard. They pass to us. We draw a Smuggler's Copter. We level up our Hex Drinker so it has protection from everything, play a Temple Garden, tapped, go to combat, swing in for 6. Opponent takes it down to 10. We pass the turn there. Opponent runs out a Kaya, ticks down on our Giver of Runes. Our Giver of Runes goes away. They play a Marsh Flats, crack it immediately, they're down to 9, play a Plains, and run out a Gideon of the Trials. They tick up the Gideon targeting one of our lands, and they swing in the air for 4. We take it down to 14, and they pass the turn. We draw a Ghost Quarter. We'll run out the Ghost Quarter, play our Smuggler's Copter, go to combat, we swing at our opponent, get them down to 3, and then we get our Lurrus to hand and pass the turn. Opponent exiles both cards from our graveyard with the Kaya, goes up to 5, emblems their Gideon so they can't lose the game as long as they control a Gideon, and they activate their Shambling Vent. They go to combat, swing in for 6. We use our Ghost Quarter to blow up the Shambling Vent. Our opponent gets a Swamp, and we take 4 down to 10. Our opponent casts a second Kaya, ticks the second Kaya up, exiling both permanents from our graveyard. They pass to us. We draw an Amara. We run out the Amara. We tap the Amara to crew our Smuggler's Copter, getting ourselves a Soldier. Go to combat. Smuggler's Copter trigger goes off. We draw a card. It's a Ghost Quarter. We discard it. Our opponent declares no blocks. Hex Drinker kills their Kaya, and Smuggler's Copter takes them down to 4. We then run out our Lurrus of the Dream Den and pass the turn. Our opponent draws nothing and scoops it up. Game 2, our opponent gets to go first. We get a rocky hand, but given they're probably a smallpox deck, we decide to keep. We go to our opponent's turn. They play a Marsh Flats, crack it immediately, get themselves a basic Swamp, and they Thoughtseize us. They take one of our Path to Exiles, and they pass to us. We draw a Qasali Pridemage. We run out a Temple Garden tapped, and pass back to our opponent. Opponent plays a Shambling Vent tapped, and passes back to us. We draw an Aether Vial, we play a Razorverge Thicket, and we run out our Quasali Pride Mage. We pass the turn there. Our opponent plays the Flagstones of Trakir and has the Smallpox. Both players lose a life, we each discard a card. We decide to discard our Phyrexian Revoker, thinking we can get it back with Lurrus later, and we sacrifice our Quasali Pride Mage and our Temple Garden. Our opponent sacrifices their Flagstones of Trakir and gets themselves a basic Plains. We go to our turn. We draw a Ghost Quarter, we run out the Ghost Quarter, cast our Aether Vial, and pass the turn there. Our opponent plays a Godless Shrine tapped and runs out a Kaya. Kaya ticks down, exiling our Aether Vial, and they pass the turn to us. We draw a Noble Hierarch, we run out our Horizon Canopy, play our Noble Hierarch, and pass the turn there. Our opponent casts a Liliana of the Last Hope. We decide we've seen enough value, and we scoop it up. Game 3, we get to go first. We reveal our Lurrus. We get a hand filled with all the tools we'll need to beat them, so we decide to keep. We lead on Forest, into Aether Vial, and we pass the turn. Our opponent leads on a tapped Shambling Vent, and passes back to us. We tick up our Aether Vial, draw ourselves a Thalia, play a Plains, run out the Thalia, and pass the turn there. Our opponent plays a Fetid Heath, and casts a Dark Confidant. They pass to us. We activate our Aether Vial, and put our Hex Drinker into play. Going to our turn, in response to our Aether Vial trigger, we put our Noble Hierarch into play. We then tick our Aether Vial up to 2, and we draw a Temple Garden. We play our Horizon Canopy, level up our Hex Drinker, so it now has protection from instants, go to combat, and we swing in for 6. We pass the turn. Our opponent's Dark Confidant hits a land, they play another Fetid Heath, and they cast an Inquisition of Kozilek. They take our Voice of Resurgence, declare no attacks, and pass the turn. We tick up our Aether Vial, draw a path to exile, play our Temple Garden, and get our Lurrus to hand. We go to combat and swing in again for 6. No blocks from our opponent, and they take it down to 8. We pass to them. Dark Confidant reveals a Fatal Push. They play their Silent Clearing, cast a second Dark Confidant, and Fatal Push our Thalia. They swing in for 2 with the Dark Confidant, we take it down to 17, and in their end step, we vial in our Lurrus. We go to our turn. We draw another land. We recast our Thalia from grave, path to exile the Dark Confidant, and our opponent scoops up the match. Okay, so what do we think of the Smuggler's Copter addition to our Lurrus Leap Hatebear Death and Taxes style list? You know what? I don't hate it. Smuggler's Copter and Amara, it's not a bad combo. It's not the best combo I've ever seen. It's not game ending, but it certainly gives us more options, and it's just another way we can accumulate a board. It won't be going into the video, but we did lose a game to Control. Unfortunately, just because all of our creatures are so small, the opportunity cost of casting a creature or even Aether Vialing in a creature just can't match up to a Terminus board wipe or our creatures getting countered a lot of the time. Even if we can double spell, them still countering one means we're putting a 2/2 into play when they're getting ready to play a huge Teferi. The reason that's not in the video is because the opponent had no interest in playing any games after game 1, so that was fun. But yes, Control is certainly a weakness of the deck, even with Voice of Resurgence and the Singleton Grand Abolisher in the sideboard and Gaddock Teague in the sideboard. I do find that they're just able to Cryptic Command us. I do find they're able to just Cryptic us out of the game. We can't get any attacks in. They don't care about us generating tokens with Voice of Resurgence because that ends up getting tapped by the Cryptic anyway. I think maybe a way we could get around it is with some man lands of some description, just 1 or 2 of those. So even if they do tap our board, we're then able to, after it's tapped, but before we go to our declare attackers, animate the man land and still get in for some damage. That might certainly give us a bit of an edge, and it also means we don't have to dedicate as many sideboard slots to Control matchups. I didn't particularly miss Life from the Loam. Certainly against the Smallpox deck, it was on my mind that it would be a big help, but we managed to do alright in those matchups. We kept a bad hand in game 2, which certainly didn't help things, but game 3 we had a much better, much more proactive hand, and they just couldn't keep up with us. Hex Drinker is once again proving to be an incredible asset to this deck. Just being able to pump a bunch of mana into it and have a creature that your opponent just cannot deal with outside of a board wipe has proven to be a huge asset to this deck. I'm not sure if bumping up the numbers is correct, but you know what? I'm gonna try. All in all, I think things are going pretty well. I'm certainly getting better at playing with the deck. I hope you guys are still enjoying it. If you have any recommendations on things that we could run, certainly let me know because I'd love to hear it. This is a deck list that I think has potential and I'd really like to take it as far as it can go.
So thank you all for watching. I'm sorry I've been gone for so long. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and until next time, have fun.